Hello again, everyone. Welcome to this special segment dubbed The Stars of the Inner Track. Andy, it was a long winter. Spent about a third of the season racing on the inner track, but we saw some big performances, and we're actually going to pick 4 different horses in 4 categories that we thought needed a little shout-out, that certainly earned it.
Right, absolutely. We thought we'd find some horses that sort of exemplified some of the things the inner are about, and some horses that achieved something kind of special. And we found some horses that performed especially well in the inner. You know, we appreciate all the horses that stuck around for the whole winter and made the racing go. And one of the horses, particularly in this category, we thought exemplified what that's all about.
And we'll kick things off with the Resilient Award, and we will give it to Reptilian Smarts, a 5-year-old horse by Include, who 2 years ago ran in the Wood Memorial. He had been off a real spotty 4-year-old campaign. This is him actually winning his first race off the claim for Rick Dutcher on December 4th, and after that, it would be 4 straight wins, and he handled a bunch of different scenarios.
Yeah, he really did. It was exceptional. He won this. This was the second day of the inner, his first win. 3 days later, December 7th, he came back, and he won another close one. He was laid up a little bit after that, and he comes back a little bit later, I think sometime in January. We're going to see him in a second. And the turf was still pretty green then. We go early January, a month later, and here's Reptilian Smarts winning his 3rd race in a row. And then he came back, I think, 19 days later, perhaps. It was
January 30th, and he was able to defeat Lord Kipling and Coyote's Highest Call. And this was the race where his jockey, Jose Berrios Cruz, actually got in trouble. He stood up before the wire. He was fined a couple of $1,000, but a few weeks later, March 18th, a 6-week layoff, Reptilian Smarts was back and once again defeated Coyote's Highest Call. Horse that, as I mentioned, overcame a number of different scenarios, and the thing I liked about him most, in addition to being a win machine, was the heart and determination he had. What a racehorse.
Yeah, you know, you look at those races, and he was not a horse that took advantage of any kind of biases. Yeah. I mean, there were a number of race dynamics where he was a big closer and the paces weren't that fast, and he made big, wide closing moves, and whatever happened, he got it done. As you saw in the last one, and a couple of them, he was involved in real stretch duels, and he prevailed every single time. 5 to 5.
Next up on deck, we'll go to a throwback, the Iron Man Award, and we've got to give it to Hedge Fund. You could count on a few different things this past winter. Cold weather, a steady diet of 6 furlong and mile and 70-yard races, and Hedge Fund being in the entry box every 10 days or so.
Absolutely. He was amazing. This is I think his first race on the inner. It was the 14th of December, and Hedge Fund finishes a close 3rd in that race. Now, Hedge Fund ran 11 times on the inner, and the first 10 he did not win, but he hit the board in 9 of them. Here is a later start for him, January 31st, midway through the meet, where he actually finishes a pretty good 2nd. I believe this is Americanus winning the race, and Hedge Fund just never gives up in the race. He's getting check after check, and he's showing up in our races, race after race, and that's hard. Now, we get to the end of the inner meet for Hedge Fund, and this was last Thursday, the 26th, and Hedge Fund making his 11th start on the inner a winner.
Looked like he was a winner every step of the way. Jeffrey Sanchez, who had ridden him in his last four starts on the inner track, had a ton of horse at the top of the stretch, unleashed him. Show of colors, a long shot in the pink cap, and Japengo, who was well bet in this race. Both tried to take runs at Hedge Fund, but the 6-year-old gelding by Maria's Mons, starting for the 11th time on the inner track, finally breaks through on the final week of racing on the inner track. Neat kind of horse, 11 starts on the inner under his belt, and just a total throwback. In this day and age, whether it's a cheap claim or not, you just don't see horses compile starts like that.
It's amazing. And you think of the inner meet, and look, the racing is what it is. It's not going to be as top-level racing as we have other times of the year. And horses like Hedge Fund, they just help fill our races and run. And the fact that he achieved what he did, 11 races, 10 times in the money, and winning his last start seemed so fitting. You have to give him some kind of award. And he shares the award for all the horses that help make the racing go the whole winter.
Absolutely. Those bread and butter claimers, we love them. Next up, we'll switch gears a bit, jump into the stakes portion of the show, and we've got to start certainly as far as the top filly or mare and give it to the 3-year-old filly. What a pair. Low-profile connections, trained by Joe Parker, just a class act, a daughter of E. Dubai, who, as we tape this Thursday morning, a couple of days from now, she's actually going to put her unbeaten streak on the line in the Grade 1 Ashland of Keeneland.
I know, it is amazing. And here she is winning a maiden race, I think the first Saturday of the inner track meet. Once again, look at the turf course, looked pretty good last December, and she came through between horses. She stretched right out, going just about a month later, I guess 34 days later. She sat a nice trip, she split horses, and she won pretty impressively in here. And after this race, she actually started running in stakes races. She went into the stakes, the WISTFUL, in her next start, and she won really just as easily. Once again, getting a nice trip, but she's got the tactical speed that puts her in the game.
And this race was like really the eye-opener for me, because I thought she was going way up in class. She was running against open company, 3-year-old fillies, and it was the same old story with her winning by a determined length and a half, 2 lengths on the finish line. The Busher, however, was the race race, I went, whoa, this New York bred is a serious, serious runner. And this is her beneath jockey Channing Hill, who turned the February 22nd Busher into an absolute runaway. The official margin, 10 1/4 lengths, and I don't know if we've seen the best of her yet.
No, she's a very, very nice horse, and she's really been getting better with all her starts. She had the track in her favor a little bit in this race, might make the race look a little better than it is, but there's no doubt she's a very nice horse. A New York bred, winning 4 races on the Inner, and as you said, propelling herself to running in the Ashland this weekend. I can't wait to see how she runs. Now, we'll see how she handles the synthetic track down in Kentucky, but she's a horse that's going to win some races down the road, but she'll always be remembered for starting her year in the winners, her career in the Inner, and running and winning 4 races.
And also in action Saturday, but here at the Big A, in one of our 4 graded stakes that comprise a $400,000 guaranteed all-stakes pick 4, is Barrier Reef. He was a horse as a 3-year-old in 2008, had done some nice things on the Inner Track, won the World Away. They had switched trainers, Godolphin did, or Sheikh Mohammed did, and he really lost a step and just didn't hit his best stride over the spring, summer, and fall. But back here at the Big A, on the Inner Track, reunited with Tom Albertrani, Barrier Reef turned into a winning stakes machine.
No question. This was his first start, and it was allowance off a layoff, and he hadn't really run well at all when he was around during the winter. He ran at Saratoga, he ran at Belmont, and this race we had a fast pace, but it wasn't one of those total collapses where he just sort of showed up at the end of the race. He made a big move, as we're showing here, around the turn into the stretch, and he just opened up daylight against an overmatched field. But he showed with this race that he was back, and he was ready to possibly make some noise and show the kind of form he had shown last year, when I know that I thought he might actually be a Triple Crown contender. Now, I was wrong about that, but I'm not so sure he's not going to be a real contender for handicap races and big races later this year. And now we'll go to his second start, which actually was the Evening Attire.
And Evening Attire would have dug it. They're both gray horses, and the heart that Barrier Reef showed in this race was something that I had not seen him do in quite some time, because if you look at his other wins on the Inner Track, he'd always had a good trip for the most part, had been very handy and push button. This was the race where he met to his inside in the Yellow Silks a very, very stubborn foe and Broadway Producer, and he even had the 3-horse Brilliant Sun on the outside bearing down. Barrier Reef dug in, got the money, and I said, wow, what a game racehorse. I didn't know he had that much determination and resiliency. And then, of course, he capped this memorable Inner Track campaign by winning the Stymie, and this time back to his normal open lengths.
Yeah, he was impressive in this race, because he actually stumbled behind horses and may have actually clipped heels going around the turn. And while we had a contentious pace in here, True Resurgence, his second now, finished his third, was on the lead the whole way. It's not like the pace totally collapsed. And this race almost reminded me of a turf race, the way he saved ground, angled out, and just buried the field. Barrier Reef is going to, he's going to have to prove to some people he's more than an Inner Track horse, because I think all 5 of his wins have been on the Inner Track, including these 3 this year and 2 last year. But I think we're going to see on Saturday the Excelsior, he's much more than that, and hopefully more down the road. But one thing we know, that he was the biggest star of the Inner.
4 categories in the books, and before we get out of here, certainly want to thank all of the horses that made the Inner Track what it was. And it was a memorable meet, and I had a fun time this winter, and certainly a congratulations to Gary Catessa, Ramon Dominguez, and Rapoli Stable as the leader in 3 different categories.
Yeah, and also everybody that helps make the Inner meet go, because it's a long, hard winter, and everybody who works on the backstretch, and everybody who works at the track, everybody works especially hard. It's a long winter. We're glad the warm weather's coming, but we want to say we appreciate everything everybody did to make this Inner meet successful.
Back on the main, turf racing right around the corner. Have a great Saturday with the Wood Memorial right around the corner, and thanks for tuning in to this special segment of the Inner Track Stars.